It is 11:47 at night in Brooklyn, and for the first time in 7 years, you are not afraid of the silence in your own apartment. You are sitting on the floor of a 420 square foot studio in Crown Heights. There is one lamp on, and it makes a small, warm circle on the wooden floor in front of you. There is a notebook open on your knee. There is a glass, and you do not have to text anyone back, and that fact alone is so strange and so new that you have been crying off and on for the last hour without making any sound at all. My name is Wes Calder, and I want to tell you how Lina Ward got here. I want to tell you how a woman who, at 22, said yes to 17 social obligations a week became a woman at 29 who said no to almost all of them, and finally became the person she had been carrying around inside her chest the entire time. This is not a story about hating people. This is a story about a quieter and harder thing. This is a story about the slow, embarrassing, almost shameful discovery that the person you have been outsourcing your attention to for the last decade is the only person who was ever going to live your life. And that person, it turns out, lives in the silence. So sit down, pour something, and let me walk you through the 7 levels of how Lina Ward stopped being afraid of being alone. Level 1 is August. You are 22. You have just graduated from a small liberal arts college in upstate New York with a degree in English literature, which your father, on the phone, has stopped calling a degree and started calling a hobby. You have moved into a railroad apartment in Bushwick with 3 other women you met on a roommate finder app 2 weeks ago. The rent is $1,847 a month, split 4 ways, which means your share is $461.75, and that number is taped to the inside of the kitchen cabinet next to a chore wheel that nobody honors. The apartment has no living room. The apartment has a hallway that one of your roommates, a woman named Iris who works in fashion PR, has decided to call the lounge, even though it is just a hallway with a beanbag chair in it. There is 1 bathroom. There is a kitchen with a stove that only lights 2 of its 4 burners. There is your bedroom, which is technically a converted dining nook with a sheet hung across the doorway because there is no door. Your bed touches 3 walls. When you lie down, you can reach the ceiling. You did not know when you signed the lease that this was going to be your life. You thought it was going to be temporary. You thought very specifically the words, "for now." You will say those 2 words to yourself, like a small prayer, every night for the next 4 years. For now. For now. For now. The first thing you notice in that August is that there is never any silence. Iris has people over. Iris always has people over. The girl in the room next to yours, a woman named Pia who is studying for the bar exam, plays podcasts on a small Bluetooth speaker from the moment she wakes up to the moment she falls asleep, and sometimes through the night because she falls asleep with the speaker still playing. The 4th roommate, whose name you will not remember for almost 3 weeks because she is rarely there, leaves the television on whenever she is in the apartment because she says the silence makes her anxious. So there is always a sound. There is always a voice. There is always somebody else's narrative pouring into the air of the rooms you are trying to live inside of. And in that August, sitting on your bed with your knees pulled up to your chest, you make a decision that will shape the next 7 years of your life. You decide that the problem is you. You decide that the reason you feel exhausted, the reason you feel like you are wearing someone else's nervous system, the reason you flinch when Iris's friends laugh too loudly in the lounge that is just a hallway, is that you are too sensitive, too fragile, too precious, too quiet, too inward, too strange, and that what you need to do, urgently, before anyone notices, is to fix it. You need to get bigger. You need to get louder. You need to get more. You write that down in the back of a notebook, the word more, underlined twice. You do not know it yet, but that single word, written in pencil on the inside back cover of a $5 Moleskine in August of the year you turned 22, is the beginning of the wrong life. Wes Calder met Lina Ward for the first time about 4 months after she wrote that word, at a publishing industry mixer in a converted warehouse in Long Island City, and he will tell you, honestly, that he did not notice her. There were 240 people in that room. She was one of them. She was wearing a black turtleneck and a name tag that said Lina with a small star drawn next to it, and she was standing very close to a literary agent named Hollis Drew, laughing at something he said in a way that did not quite reach her eyes. He noticed the not quite reaching part. He did not notice her. That is the whole of it. That is what level 1 feels like. You are in the room, you have arrived, you are doing the thing, you are saying the thing, you are laughing the laugh, and nobody, including yourself, can actually see you. You are not yet a person. You are a presence. You are a count. You are one of the 240. Level 2 is the year that follows. Level 2 is the year of yes. You begin, very deliberately, to say yes to everything. You say yes to the agency happy hours on Thursdays, even though you do not drink and the bar is loud and you have to take 2 trains to get there. You say yes to Iris's birthday brunches, 3 of them in a row, because she has decided that 23 deserves a season rather than a day. You say yes to the writing workshop on Sunday evenings in a basement on Atlantic Avenue, where 11 other aspiring novelists read pages aloud and then critique each other with a kind of warmth that, after the 3rd week, begins to feel like a competitive sport. You say yes to the after the workshop drinks. You say yes to the after the drinks dinners. You say yes to the dinners that become parties. You say yes when a stranger named Felix invites you to his rooftop because his roommate Iris told him you are fun. You did not know Iris had described you that way. You feel a small jolt of pride. Fun. You tuck the word into your pocket like a coin. You begin, in this year, to count things. You do not realize you are counting them, but you are. You count the number of social obligations on your calendar each week. The first month, it is 9. The second month, it is 12. By March, it is 17. 17 weekly events. 2.5 a day, every day, including Sundays. You count the number of LinkedIn contacts you have. At the start of the year, it is 83. By the end of the year, it is 412. You count the number of times your name is mentioned in other people's Instagram stories in a given week. You count the number of times you are tagged in a group photo. You count the number of texts you send that begin with the word OMG. You begin, slowly, to confuse the count with the life. You begin to confuse visibility with value. The publishing industry, in your particular year of being 23, runs on something it calls being out there, and you have decided that being out there is the only available substitute for being good. You are not yet good. You know this. You have written 11,000 words of a novel that you started in college, and in that entire year, the year of yes, you will add 0 words to it. The document will sit, untouched, in a folder on your laptop called Work/Novel/Draft 2. You will open it twice, once in May and once in October. Both times you will read the first paragraph, feel a small, sick feeling in your stomach, and close the laptop. Both times you will, within 20 minutes, leave the apartment to go to something. There is always something to go to. That is the great reassurance of level 2. There is always something to go to, and as long as there is something to go to, you do not have to find out whether the 11,000 words you wrote in college were any good, or whether you, as a person, contain any more words after them. The terror of opening the document is exactly equal to the relief of closing it. You do not yet know that this is what your life is now. You think it is preparation. You think it is networking. You think it is, in some unspecified future moment, going to pay off. Hollis Drew, the literary agent you laughed at in Long Island City, follows you back on Twitter in February. You take a screenshot. You send the screenshot to your mother. Your mother, who lives in Hartford and works as a paralegal and has not, to your knowledge, ever read a contemporary literary novel in her entire adult life replies with 3 exclamation points and a smiley face. You feel, in that moment, more visible than you have ever felt. You feel, for about 20 minutes, like the year of yes was worth it. The 11,000 words sit in their folder. They do not become 12,000. They do not become 11,001. People around you begin to describe you in introductions as a writer. You do not correct them. You smile. You say thank you. You go to the next thing. Wes Calder will tell you, because he saw it from the outside, that you looked in that year like a young woman who had figured something out. You looked like one of the lucky ones. You had the contacts. You had the calendar. You had the LinkedIn count and the screenshot of Hollis Drew's follow. You had, by every metric that Level 2 recognizes, made it. You are exhausted. You are exhausted in a way that you cannot describe to anyone, because exhaustion is supposed to come from work, and you have not done any work, and so the exhaustion does not, in your own mind, count. You sleep 5.5 hours a night. You wake up tired. You drink a great deal of cold brew coffee. You eat lunch standing up at your desk in a small editorial assistant job at a literary magazine on Lafayette Street, where you make $38,000 a year before taxes, and where your boss, a woman named Margaret who is 61 and has published 2 collections of essays, looks at you, in March, across a stack of unopened submissions, and says, very quietly, the way someone tells you there is something on your face, "Lina, you look tired." You laugh. You wave it off. You say, in the bright voice you have been practicing for almost a year now, "Oh, you know how it is." Margaret does not laugh back. Margaret looks at you for 1 beat longer than is comfortable, and then she looks back down at the submissions, and she says, half to herself and half to the room, "I used to know how it was. Then I stopped knowing." You will not understand what she meant for another 6 years. You will think about that sentence, off and on, in the dark, for the rest of your 20s. Level 3 is the slow rot, and the slow rot is the part that nobody warns you about, because the slow rot does not look like rot from the inside. From the inside, it looks like a busy season. From the inside, it looks like things are about to break open for you. 24, 25, 26. 3 years pass, and they pass the way 3 years pass for everyone who is not paying attention, which is to say, they pass in a kind of fog where each individual week feels enormous, and the year, looking back, feels like a single long Thursday. Iris moves out. Pia passes the bar and moves to DC. 2 new roommates move in, and then one of them moves out, and then another moves in, and you stop learning their last names. You move, briefly, to a slightly larger apartment in Bed-Stuy with a woman named C, who is a stand-up comic, and the rent is now $620 for your share, and the apartment has, miraculously, an actual living room, and for about 3 weeks, you think your life has begun. Then, C gets a residency in Los Angeles, and her replacement is a man named Theo, who is in finance and who plays video games, with voice chat, until 3 in the morning, and you are back inside the same problem you have been inside since you were 22, which is the problem of the sound of someone else's life pressing against the membrane of yours. The novel does not grow. The novel sits at 11,000 words in its folder on 3 successive laptops, because in this period of your life, you spill coffee on 2 of them. You begin, around 25, to lie about the novel. When people ask how it is going, which they do because you have told them you are a writer, you say, "Oh, you know, slowly." You say, "Getting there." You say, in a kind of arch, self-deprecating tone you have copied from a literary podcast, "Well, it has been a complicated year." The complicated year, by this point, is 26 months long. You have been calling it a complicated year for 26 months. Hollis Drew, the literary agent, follows you back on Twitter again after you change accounts. But he does not, you notice, ever respond to the 2 emails you send him about your work. You stop sending them. You tell yourself you will send a 3rd one when the novel is done. The novel is not done. The The novel is 11,000 words. You begin, in this period, to feel something underneath the exhaustion that you do not have a name for. It is not sadness, exactly. It is not depression, exactly. It is something more like a kind of low-grade humming alarm, a smoke detector with a dying battery somewhere in a room you cannot find. The alarm goes off, faintly, when you wake up. The alarm goes off, faintly, when you get on the train. The alarm goes off very loudly on the rare evenings when you have nothing scheduled, and so you, very quickly, schedule something. Because the alarm is unbearable when there is no noise to drown it out. You begin, around 26, to be afraid of empty evenings. You begin to text people on Tuesdays at 4 in the afternoon with a small panic in your chest, asking what they are doing tonight. You begin to feel relief, a real and physical relief, like cool water on a burn, when someone says, "Yes, come over, come out, meet us." You begin, very quietly, to understand that you are not socializing. You are hiding. The thing you are hiding from is in the apartment. The thing you are hiding from is in your own chest. The thing you are hiding from is the 11,000 words and the question they ask, which is the question you have been refusing to answer since you were 22, which is the question of whether there is anything else inside you, or whether the 11,000 words were all of it, the whole of you, the only words you were ever going to have. You do not know which answer would be worse. You suspect, in some honest small part of your mind, that you visit only on the train at night with headphones in, that the answer is the second one, that there is nothing else, and that you have built an entire social architecture for the specific purpose of never having to find out. Wes Calder will tell you that this is the most common shape of a wasted decade in the city of New York. Not drugs, not partying in the dramatic sense, not catastrophe. Just this. Just the slow, polite, well-attended, well-photographed evasion of the one quiet hour in which you would have had to meet yourself. He has watched it happen to dozens of people. He has, if he is honest, watched it happen to himself. In another decade, in another city. He is not telling you Lina's story because it is unusual. He is telling you Lina's story because it is the most usual story he knows, and because almost nobody, when they are inside it, can see it. The crack, when it comes, does not come in a single moment. The crack comes in 3 small moments across one autumn. The autumn you are 28, and you will only later, in the studio in Crown Heights with the lamp on, be able to put them in a row and see that they were the same crack widening. The first moment is in October. You are at a book launch on the 2nd floor of a wine bar in the West Village for a debut novel by a woman named, of all things, also Lina, whose last name is Park, and who is 26, and who has, you understand from the introduction, written this book in 8 months while working a full-time job in tech. You stand near the back, holding a plastic cup of warm white wine, and you listen to her read for 9 minutes from a chapter about a woman moving into a small apartment alone. And the language is not, in your private estimation, particularly remarkable. And the observations are not, in your private estimation, particularly new. But the book exists. The book is a real object. The book is in a stack on the table by the door, and people are picking it up, and people are buying it. And Lina Park, who is younger than you, who has had 8 months where you have had 7 years, is signing them with a small black pen. And you feel, standing there with your warm wine, a sensation you have never felt before in your life, which is the sensation of your own face going numb. Not your hands, your face. You touch your cheek with 2 fingers and you cannot, for about 4 seconds, feel the touch. You leave without saying goodbye. You walk 11 blocks before you get on the train. You do not remember any of those 11 blocks. The second moment is in November. You see, on Instagram, that a man named Devin Hale, whom you went to college with, who was in your senior workshop, who was, you remember very clearly, not as good a writer as you were at 21, has published his 2nd novel. His 2nd. You did not know about the first. You missed the first entirely. You scroll back through his account. The first one came out 2.5 years ago, while you were going to 412 LinkedIn contacts' birthday parties. He is photographed, in the November post, in a small room with a desk and a window and one plant, and the caption says simply, 6 years of mostly being alone. Made this. You stare at that caption for a long time. 6 years of mostly being alone. You begin, without meaning to do math. You open the calculator on your phone. You count, roughly, the number of hours you have spent socializing in a given week over the last 6 years. You estimate it, conservatively, at 28 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, 1,456 hours a year. 6 years. 8,736 hours. You count also the number of hours you have spent alone with the document. You estimate, generously, that across the entire 6 years, it is something like 230 hours. 230 against 8,736. The ratio is approximately 1 to 38. For every hour you have spent alone with the only thing you have ever said you wanted to do, you have spent 38 hours in rooms full of other people, drinking warm wine, laughing the laugh, saying the thing. You put the phone down. You do not cry. You are at your desk at the literary magazine. Margaret is across the room. You think very clearly the words, "I have been outsourcing my own attention for 6 years." The thought arrives fully formed in a sentence, the way the best sentences in your novel used to arrive when you were 21. You take out a small notebook. You write the sentence down. It is the first sentence you have written in any notebook in almost 3 years. The third moment is in December. You are at a holiday party in a loft in Tribeca. There are perhaps 90 people there. You know by sight 60 of them. You know by name 40. You know in any meaningful sense 2. You are standing near a window, looking out at the cold black river, when a woman you have met perhaps 8 times, whose name you cannot quite produce on demand, and who is in the publishing industry in some adjacent capacity, comes up behind you and says, with the kind of bright, fond cruelty that this milieu has perfected, "Oh my God, Lina, you are everywhere." And she means it as a compliment. She means it as the highest possible compliment her world has to offer. And you turn, and you smile, and you say thank you. And the smile is the smile you have been wearing for 7 years. And somewhere underneath the smile, in a place you can almost physically locate, behind your sternum, slightly to the left, a very small thing breaks. It does not break loudly. It breaks the way a thin sheet of ice breaks under one careful footstep. There is a small, clean sound. And then there is water under your feet where the ground used to be. You leave the party at 9:40. You take the train back to Bed-Stuy. You do not text anyone. You walk into the apartment. Theo is on the couch with his headset on, shouting at someone in a different state. You go into your room. You close the door, which is, mercifully, in this apartment, a real door. You sit on the edge of the bed, in your coat, with your boots still on, and you say, out loud, to the empty room, in a voice you have not heard yourself use in a very long time, "I have been afraid of myself." The room does not answer. The room does not need to. You already know. Level 5 is what Wes Calder calls the waiting room. And the waiting room is the period between knowing and acting. And in Lina's case, it lasts 23 days. From the night of the holiday party until the 2nd of January. 23 days in which you do almost nothing externally and almost everything internally. You stop saying yes. Not dramatically, not announced. You simply, when invitations come, find that your thumb hesitates over the screen for a beat longer than it used to, and that in that hesitation you can hear, faintly, the small, clean sound of the ice breaking, and you find yourself typing, instead of yes, the words, "I cannot this week." You send that sentence 11 times in 23 days. Each time you send it, you wait. with a tightness in your chest for the consequence. You wait for the friendship to end. You wait for the social structure to collapse. You wait for the world to punish you for the no. The world does not punish you. The world, mostly, does not notice. 2 people ask if you are okay. 9 people send back a thumbs up emoji. The 11th, a woman named Sasha, whom you have known since you were 23, sends a message that says simply, "Good for you." Take the time. You stare at that message for a long time. You did not know until that moment that taking the time was something a person was allowed to do. You did not know that the thing on the other side of the no was not exile. You did not know that the no, said clearly and without explanation, was a door you had been allowed to walk through this entire time. You spend the 23 days mostly in your room. You read, slowly, 3 books. You write, slowly, 4,000 words. The 4,000 words are not for the novel. The 4,000 words are a long letter to yourself in the small notebook, beginning with the sentence, "I have been outsourcing my own attention for 6 years." You do not know on the 2nd of January, when you finally close the notebook, that you have just done the most important piece of work of your life so far. You only know that something in the apartment, in the city, in your chest, has gone very quiet, and that the quiet, which used to be the thing you were running from, has begun to feel, faintly, the way a warm room feels after a long walk in the cold. Level 6 is action, and action, in Lina's case, takes the shape of 1 signed lease and 1 Tuesday morning. The signed lease is for a 420 square foot studio on the 3rd floor of a brownstone in Crown Heights. The rent is $1,275 a month, which is more than you have ever paid for a single room in your life, and which is, after taxes, almost 40% of your take-home income, and which is, by every standard piece of financial advice you have ever read, irresponsible. You sign it anyway. You sign it on a Saturday afternoon in the 2nd week of January, in a small office on Nostrand Avenue, with a landlord named Mr. Adesanya, who looks at you when you hand back the pen and says, "You are going to live there alone?" And you say, "Yes." And he says, with a small, unreadable smile, "Good. Quiet is expensive." You will think about that sentence also for the rest of your life. You move on a Tuesday. You bring the bed, the desk, the lamp, the chair, and 7 boxes. The 7 boxes contain, mostly, books. You leave most of your clothes. You leave the espresso machine that you bought in a fit of self-improvement at 25 and used 11 times. You leave the standing mirror. You leave, somewhat ceremonially, the plastic crate of name tags and lanyards from 7 years of industry events, which you have, for reasons you cannot explain, kept in the bottom of every closet in every apartment since you were 22. You put it on the curb. You watch from the window of the U-Haul as a man walks past it, glances down, and keeps walking. Nobody wants the lanyards. Nobody ever wanted the lanyards. The lanyards were a gift you were giving only to yourself, and the gift was the lie that they meant something. You drive to Crown Heights. You carry the 7 boxes up 3 flights of stairs by yourself because you have not, you realize, asked anyone to help you, and because you do not, you realize, want to. The first night in the studio, you sit on the bare mattress on the floor, in the empty room, with 1 lamp on, and you do nothing for 2 hours. You do not read, you do not write, you do not text, you do not put on music. You sit and you listen to the building, and you listen to your own breath, and somewhere around the 90-minute mark, you begin, very softly, to cry. And you cry for a long time, without any of the usual narratives attached to crying, without thinking about anyone in particular, without composing the social media version of the cry, just crying. The way a body cries when it has been holding something for 7 years and is finally allowed to set it down. You sleep that night for 9 hours. You have not slept 9 hours in a single night since you were 19 years old. The Tuesday morning is the Tuesday morning of the following week. You wake up at 6:40. There are no notifications on your phone because you have, the night before, Turn the phone all the way off and put it inside a drawer. You make coffee. You sit at the small desk by the one window. You open the laptop. You open the folder called Work/Novel/Draft2. You open the document. You read the 11,000 words. They are not, you discover with a small shock, terrible. They are not, you also discover, the work of a person who has lived through anything. They are the work of a 21-year-old who had read a great deal and lived very little, and who had mistaken, in the way the very young do, a vocabulary for a soul. You scroll to the end. You put your fingers on the keys. You write, on the morning of the 15th of January, the year you are 29, the first new sentence of your novel in 7 years. The sentence is 6 words long. The sentence is a description of a woman sitting on a bare mattress on the floor of an empty room with one lamp on. You write, after that sentence, another sentence, and then another. And then, before you have entirely registered what is happening, an hour has passed, and there are 420 new words in the document. 1 word for every square foot of the apartment, and you are crying again. But this time the crying is different. This time, the crying is the kind of crying that happens when something you had assumed was dead inside you turns out to have only been asleep. Level 7 is the truth, and the truth, when it arrives, does not arrive as a grand revelation. It arrives instead as a quiet rearrangement of everything you thought you knew. It arrives over the next 10 months in the small studio in Crown Heights as the 420 words become 4,000, become 40,000, become, by the following October, a complete first draft of a novel that is not the novel you started at 21, but something else, something stranger and truer, something written by the woman you became in the silence rather than the girl you had been pretending to be in the noise. The truth is this: solitude is not the absence of people. Solitude is the presence of yourself. For 7 years, you believed that being alone was a kind of failure, a confession that nobody had chosen you, a small daily humiliation that had to be covered up with company. You believed that the empty evening was a wound. You believed that the quiet apartment was an accusation. You believed that if you were not visible to other people, you were not, in some fundamental sense, real. And what you understand now, on the floor of the studio at 11:47 at night, with the lamp making its small, warm circle, and the notebook open on your knee, is that the opposite was true the whole time. You were not real in those rooms. You were a presence. You were a count. You were one of the 240. The only place you were ever going to become real was the room nobody else was in. The only person who was ever going to live your life was the one you had spent 7 years refusing to be alone with. If Wes Calder could go back and find you in that railroad apartment in Bushwick in August of the year you turned 22, sitting on your bed with your knees pulled up to your chest, writing the word "more" in the back of a $5 moleskin, he would sit down on the edge of that mattress and he would take the pencil out of your hand and he would say to you, very gently, the thing nobody said to him when he was your age: alone is not lonely. Alone is the room where you finally hear yourself. He would say it once. He would not explain it. He would put the pencil back in your hand and he would leave. And he would trust, because he has to trust, because all of us who have walked this road have to trust it for the one still in the noise, that you would, eventually, in your own time, in your own studio, on your own Tuesday morning, write that sentence down for yourself. It is 11:47 at night in Brooklyn. The lamp is on, the notebook is open. The glass of water has gone slightly warm. Somewhere down the hall, 3 doors away, someone is playing music that is not yours. You do not have to react to it. You do not have to text anyone back. You do not have to pretend to enjoy it. You are 29 years old, and for the first time in 7 years, you are not afraid of the silence in your own apartment. You are not afraid of yourself. The room is small. The rent is expensive. The novel is almost done. And you, finally, after all of it, are here. Alone is not lonely. Alone is the room where you finally hear yourself. Next week on this channel, we are going to talk about the next part of the same instrument. We are going to talk about what happens when solitude stops being something you flee toward in panic and starts being something you wield deliberately as a tool. We are going to talk about a man named Aaron Vasco, who, at 34, walked out of a crowded room in the middle of his own promotion party, and who never, in any meaningful sense, walked back in. We are going to talk about the difference between hiding from the crowd and choosing against it. Until then, take the quiet hour. Sit inside it. Do not fill it. See what is there. I am Wes Calder. Thank you for listening.